Tropical storm threat for the southern Caribbean coming up this week. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for October 6th. Right now around the world we appear to have entered a little bit of a quiet space with no tropical storms active right now. We have the remnants of Paine and Tropical Depression 12 in the Atlantic Ocean, and Paine of course in the Pacific. Code yellow though for another area of interest in the Atlantic. And here it is on day 128 of the season so far, an 80% chance there for the southern Caribbean primarily. A storm is expected to develop and probably become a hurricane before reaching Central America. We could be looking at Honduras or Nicaragua landfall, and then possibly through Belize and Guatemala and into Mexico. In the eastern Pacific, the remnants of Paine are barely even traceable at this point. It's been a very painful end to this storm in the last 24 hours. It's actually a quick demise, but still it's holding on as a remnant. You can still trace it, but only just. No areas of interest though in the western Pacific right now, so even worse than the eastern Pacific at this moment in time, a time of year that we should really be seeing more activity, but 18 storms so far isn't particularly well below average anymore. And in the South Indian Ocean, the one area of interest with a 70% chance could become our fourth early season storm in the South Indian Ocean, and it looks like it might get itself together in the next 24 hours at this rate, so keep watching that space. Well then, let's take a look at some of the satellite imagery. This is the view in the Atlantic right now, and the first thing I noticed when I was looking at this is how much dry air there is in that line, sort of trough extending from still the remnants of Ian actually, and just general thunderstorms over Central America, but obviously we note that invest. And this is the eastern Pacific, and you can see you can't even see Paine at all on this particular imagery. It's just a little bit of low cloud at this point, but there is another disturbance to the east, but we don't have that marked anymore. We're not expecting that to form. It's just going to remain a disturbance. Close look at the Atlantic systems then. This is Tropical Depression 12, and you can see there it's failing, I think is the operative word. It's struggling right now. It was looking better earlier on. It's still blowing up a little bit of convection there around the bottom side of it, but at the moment it looks like it's on its way out. Further towards the west though, we can see this interesting looking invest which is really hugging the coast of South America. It's right on the coastline over Venezuela now and continuing pretty much westwards, and will likely pass through some of the nation and then enter the southwest Caribbean, and then we expect it to potentially develop quite a bit up to possibly a category 1 or 2 landfall, but of course we can't really say for sure how strong this system may or may not get. Land interaction will be a factor for the early stages of this system, but I've got to say right now it's looking very healthy, and I imagine we'll be doing a lot more coverage on this storm as it continues to progress. But right now only an area of interest, but an 80% chance of development into our next tropical cyclone. Here's the view in the western Pacific, and you can see how fairly quiet it is here. A few disturbances blowing around, Philippines there, and particularly in the lower latitudes, but nothing organized, and in general the western Pacific is fairly peacefully quiet, and a few blow-ups near the Marianas as well. So let's check the Indian Ocean. You can see a few storms blowing into India right now and Sri Lanka, and you can also note the area of interest in the South Indian Ocean looking very good with some very high cloud tops. It's just got to get its rotation together properly. It's a very broad area at the moment, and I think it will consolidate pretty soon. And this is the Australian region, looking at one or two frontal systems that still persist over central Australia, and one passing through Fiji and affecting Tonga as well right now, with quite a few heavy clouds there, but generally an average picture from the southern hemisphere. Sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific remain fairly warm in a decent region there, still around 28, maybe 30 degrees in a few little areas off the coast of Mexico, and particularly the Gulf of California. Just look down there, 22 degrees I think in some of the La Nina area. We'll look at that in a minute, but the tropical depression there in the Atlantic over decent temperatures, but just starting to fall away a little bit. Dry air is getting its best of that storm, and we're looking at the Caribbean there, very warm waters all the way along, as you can see there, pushing 30 degrees the whole way. Indian Ocean, very warm, 30 degrees along the coast of India. Where the disturbance is right now, we're looking at around 28. As you can see, those waters fall off quite quickly, so it will start to weaken in the not too distant future. In the Western Pacific, still very warm waters here as well, 30 degrees or more in some areas of the Philippine Sea and South China Sea. And those warm waters extend further north still, almost as far as Kyushu with those 28 degree isotherms, and 26 almost as far as, well, just about up to Tokyo and not far from Shanghai. Look at that La Nina effect there in the eastern Pacific, extremely cold sea surface temperatures anomalies right now. So very fascinating to see how this event is developing, but everywhere else it's pretty much above average, particularly in the Western Pacific. Atlantic going off the boil just a little bit, but it's still generally above average. But check this out, the Caribbean, interesting to see and perhaps fortuitous that there is a big cold area in the oceanic heat content where this system's headed, but elsewhere in the Caribbean it is extremely conducive. In the Eastern Pacific, not too much going on there, but the Western Pacific still has a lot of oceanic heat content in the Philippine Sea, which will keep it going easily into the late season. So I would still be concerned about late activity over there. Let's check the GFS model right now then, and unfortunately I can't actually see what we're looking at because of something to do with the software again, but this imagery should be showing us a view of the Caribbean system, which should develop into a substantial tropical storm. And once again, I don't think we can rule out a hurricane from this, but we'll take it one step at a time. But it looks like the track is fairly well known. It will probably affect Central America, somewhere from Nicaragua up towards Belize, and then continue through Central America in that 5-day period. In the Western Pacific, the GFS is an outlier, but it is showing up a very interesting scenario where a storm really blows up out of nothing towards the end of that 5-day period near the Northern Mariana Islands. Once again, I can't tell you much about it because I can't actually see it on my screen as we go along the narration here, but it should become, well, this is the GFS model. None of the others are following it right now, so I certainly can't guarantee that we'll get any system at all out of this. But it's something interesting to look at nonetheless. No support from other models. In the southwest Indian Ocean, or the South Indian Ocean still, you can once again see this area of interest. I think it will get a decent rotation or center going in the next 24 hours, and it will probably be another short-lived tropical storm in the South Indian Ocean, and once again a fourth early season storm so far, which is quite something for this area, and all four of them have formed in pretty much the same place so far in this early season in the South Indian. Now let's take a look at the rainfall estimates for this Invest 91L as it pushes through the Central American continent. And once again, I'm going off memory here, but I expect that we'll see some significant rainfall totals exceeding maybe 8 inches in parts of the coastal regions of Nicaragua and Honduras, and inland it could rise to quite a bit above that. I think I saw models quoted saying something like 15 or 16 inches possible over parts of the mountains of Honduras, and that would be 400 millimeters of rain, so certainly would be a worry. And through Belize and into Mexico, I think we're expecting possibly 10 inches or more there as well, possibly 250 millimeters in that 7-day period. And I think all of that would happen regardless of this potential storm's intensity, and even if it's just still a disturbance, it might still produce some damaging flooding and rainfall. Looking at the moderate range then, once again I have no idea what it is, so I guess we'll just have to play it by ear. But in the moderate range, I think we are expecting to see nothing much going on in the Atlantic after this system. In the Eastern Pacific, I think it was starting to develop something that becomes a tropical storm later on in the sequence. But this is quite embarrassing that I can't actually see anything that I'm supposed to be looking at. I don't know why this happens. It's something with the software. We'll have to fix it for next time. In the Western Pacific, that system, or that major typhoon, as it turns out to be, becomes very strong, and possibly we get another system in the South China Sea during that period as that typhoon blows up and heads towards the Japanese islands. Can't quite remember whether it makes landfall there or not, or whether it scoots. I think it scoots out northeastwards actually and still avoids Japan. At this point, that's all the serious stuff done and dusted, so you can scan this barcode and it will take you to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at our products and our individual and full season storm animations on request, and the Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt as well. In the Scilly range, I don't remember there being anything forming in the Atlantic in that Scilly range period, nor anywhere else, I think, but there must be something, but I can't remember what it was, so I guess we'll just have to leave it at that. And I'll let the graphics tell you the rest of it, because I can't remember anything else that was shown on here, and again, it's just something that we'll have to fix. So on this day, on October 6, 1961, we had two major storms active right now. Frances in the Atlantic, not the one that most people remember, but a Category 4 that was sailing out towards the northeast that would eventually hit Atlantic Canada. But Typhoon Violet was peaking on this day as a ferocious, extremely powerful Category 5 storm. Some suggest possibly in excess of 190 miles per hour and a pressure in the 880s. X Tilde was also a post-tropical remnant north of Japan. Well, I'm sorry about all that happened with the models there. I'm very disappointed in my production software. I think we'll have to have some full-scale change pretty soon. So in the meantime, in the Atlantic, the next name on the list is Julia, and in the Eastern Pacific, our next name coming up is Roslyn, after the pity of pain. And in the Central Pacific, Hone is coming up next, soon, eventually. In the Western Pacific, Sonka is after Roki, which we had recently. And in the North Indian Ocean, potentially seeing our next named storm, Sitrang. We saw that in the very long-range GFS there, but I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. Australian region, Darian will start off this season. The Southwest Indian Ocean's next name is Balita, and in the South Pacific it's Harley. That's all for tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.